Hey, this is April, and this show, Set Show, discusses cannabis, psychedelics, and altered states of consciousness generally. It's intended for audiences 21 and over. Also, I am not a medical expert. If you are looking to engage with psychedelic substances, please consult your physician before doing so. Hi, I'm April Pride, founder of Set, where we explore the power of psychedelics and plant medicine for personal healing and transformation. Today I'm joined by Sand Symes, an extraordinary plant medicine guide who works deeply with feminine energy to facilitate healing journeys. In this first part of our conversation, Sand and I discuss the unique role of feminine energy in psychedelic work and how plant medicine can help us reconnect with our intuition and uncover profound self-awareness. Throughout our chat, Sand shares her experiences guiding women through transformative healing journeys that embrace their inner strength. 50% of all people who engage with psychedelics to support this awareness choose to work with psilocybin. If you're interested in exploring the potential of psychedelic mushrooms, follow the link in the show notes for this episode to access the Ultimate Psilocybin Guide, a comprehensive, clinician-backed resource available in PDF and audio download exclusively through Set. And remember, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to, rate, and review Set Show. It really does help more people find this important harm reduction education. Let's dive in with Sand Symes and explore the healing power of feminine energy in plant medicine.
I'd like to start with if you want to introduce yourself and your work, and then the medicine that you do work with.
My name, of course, is Sand Symes. I'm a modern medicine woman. I am a psychedelic guide. I am a former social worker, so very much grounded in things like internal family systems and childhood cycles and our ancestral lineages and our parents or our caregivers. I'm very deeply steeped in the past to understand what my present life is looking at and how I'm going to deal with that for the future. I am a seer, meaning as a 6, 7-year-old little girl, I could see energies and shapes. I could see ancestors. I could see cosmic beings. And then that very quickly disappeared when adults around me thought that was too weird and shut that down very quickly and very brutally. And then came back when I was 29 years old through the power of medicine, opened up that capillary again. And I also work as a women's empowerment coach and mentor. I am a shamanic practitioner of 22 years, and I've been sitting with the power and the sacredness of plant medicine for over 2 decades.
Thank you. And I have met Sand in person, and her energy is, it's really nice to be around. So the medicine is in you. And what medicine do you work with? And did you come to one specific medicine and then that led you to others?
Great question. My first meet with a sacred medicine was with cannabis when I was in college, which I think is a very popular and common route for many of us. And with cannabis, what I enjoyed about meeting her, and the pronoun her for all of Pachimama's medicine. So when I met her, when I met cannabis, I really enjoyed how she made me feel, because I have a lot of energy, a lot of burn energy, a lot of fire energy. I can move very quickly. So she was my first medicine that taught me how to slow down. So I'd never felt my body, and I was like 16 when I first ingested cannabis. I'd never felt my body as relaxed and open as I did when I first ingested cannabis. And I stayed with that medicine for a couple of years. And then I forgot about it. I started on life like many other people do. And then alcohol became a big part of my life at that point. In my late teens, especially in the UK, it's a huge drinking culture in our young people. So alcohol took over. And in the wisdom keeper of my 59 years around the sun now, for me personally, alcohol doesn't work well with my system at all. But the medicines work beautifully with my system. And why was I reaching for alcohol? It was for confidence. It was for inspiration. It was to fit in. It was all those things that in my early days, I was looking for that kind of substance to move me transport me. What I learned with my very first ayahuasca medicine journey, which was 21 years ago in Amsterdam, which I'll never forget. In that journey, the mother, ayahuasca, the mother, as many of your listeners know, when I met her, it was like meeting the ultimate sacred grandmother in the darkest of dark and the lightest of light. She scared me so much. And yet there was a deep impulse inside of me that I wanted to sit and understand what I thought I was understanding her. And after many journeys later, I realized the inquiry, the sacred mirror was she was inviting me to understand myself. Over a period of 16 years, I sat with ayahuasca in the jungles of Ecuador and Peru and sat with some incredible medicine teachers, as well as the beautiful medicine men and women of the Ecuadorian Peruvian rainforests that sit with this medicine. I also sat with ayahuasca in various parts of the world and beautiful teachers who really had the sacredness of this medicine come to fruition. And then one of my medicine sisters and friends and teachers and mentors, my dear Peruvian medicine woman, who I was just sharing with you, April, before our call, I apprenticed with her for 16 years with the medicine of Huachuma, which can be known also as San Pedro, which is the cactus. And understanding that medicine, a very different medicine, but also transported me to find out all the different pieces and parts of me. So my inquiry, my dance, my learning, the biggest teachers in most of my years in plant medicine have been ayahuasca and Huachuma. When I met the medicine of psilocybin, which was about 9 years ago, I was blown away at the different journey that psilocybin opened up for me. It was the first time that I'd felt that I was sitting more and more in a controlled seat of the experience and moving into the places where I wanted to go to do the deepest work. And with the other medicines, I'd felt that I was completely out of control for a long time until I started to understand the medicine and get taught by the teachers how to use the medicine in a particular way. So, and one of my first journeys with psilocybin was one of my intentions was, how can I be with this medicine and share this with the world as we want to, when deep inside of my womb, I was terrified in my physical body of the legislation system that is keeping us small and keeping this medicine away from our humanity. And the depth of the roar that was inside of me, of the pain of that. So my teacher inside of that particular medicine is the Queen of the Fairies, which might sound really woo-woo to some of your listeners. And she took me to my birthright of Ireland and took me on this journey of understanding and seeing how psilocybin and mushroom has been in that land, which is my ancestral land, forever. The famous tales and the myths and the legends of the leprechaun sitting on top of a toadstool with the rainbow. The pot of gold was never about money or a pot of gold of financial success. It's your birthright of understanding a deeper truth of who we are. And that birthright is the gold, is your awakening, is that higher consciousness. That emboldened me with that medicine, which was beautiful. So I work with psilocybin, and I also was introduced 8 years ago to the medicine MDMA, non-plant-based, as we know, not earth-based, very much a synthetic. And I've been in and out of my own internal debate of this medicine and the gift that it is to our humanity. And my downloads in all of my medicine journeys in this inquiry have been, where do you think, like when MDMA has spoken to me, where do you think I came from? The downloads from this complexity of these chemical components, where do you think I came from? I came from source. I came from, and then we can fill in the blank. I came from life itself. I came from pure consciousness. I came from the existence, which is exactly the same source where ayahuasca and Huachuma and San Pedro and mushrooms come from, that same intelligence that is feeding and serving and informing our humanity, partner with this incredible intelligence. So with all of that said, in 21 years, I've got a culmination of the three medicines I work with is psilocybin, cannabis, and MDMA. I do not work with ayahuasca. I don't work, obviously, with San Pedro or DMT. I don't work with those medicines.
Right. Meaning you don't facilitate journeys for
Correct.
others, but you participate and ingest
Yeah.
the medicine for yourself at various times. Yes. What
Yeah,
you're saying.
I do. I
Great.
do.
Thank you for that rundown. I just want a quick recap. So, for people that don't understand, ayahuasca is a combination of two vines. Description. I wanted to make the distinction between the fact that San Pedro it's cactus, right? So you've
Yes.
got vines, you have cacti, and then of course psilocybin comes from fungi, and that's a mushroom, and the cap and stem.
Right.
Then MDMA is always going to be synthesized, but is the original chemistry, it's synthesized from a blueprint of sassafras, which is a flower, I believe. So there's some nature in there. It does come from source. I don't know. I don't think if you consume sassafras, you're going to get exactly the same effect as
No.
if you, yeah.
Let's be grateful for that the partnership, which is all of this medicine work, is partnering with an intelligence that is, we can argue it's greater than the intelligence that we're most operating from in everyday life. But what it does is it meets our deepest blueprints of our intelligence. We are source. We are this intelligence. And we have been covered over and buried, and all of that intelligence has been stuffed down. And we could wax lyrically for several decades, you and I, April, on that topic alone. But that has these medicines, the power and the sacredness of the power is the sacredness of these medicines. And MDMA, I put MDMA in that exact same category. The work that I've done with myself, always working with myself first. I am my first client, and working with the clients that I've worked with. It's mind blowing what is available in terms of the deepest possible change that we can make as humans on this planet. And I also am very aware and I'm cautious when I say that is it's not everybody is going to walk through that door and that gateway. And that's okay because we were given free will, we were given choice. But I hope that people educate themselves around these topics. And that's why, April, I love you. I love what you're doing in this podcast is educating us a little bit more because we have been indoctrinated with the dogma that we don't use the word medicine, we use the word drugs. When we talk about any of these, whether it's ayahuasca, it's a drug. And in my world, I'm so against any word being called drug around these medicines. It's a medicine at its very definition helps to move our humanity, the human pain into the light in some shape or form.
It certainly does that. I was thinking MDMA was, aside from cannabis, which is a weed, technically, right?
Yes.
As we're going through the plant kingdom. So MDMA was, aside from cannabis, was my first psychedelic. And yeah, I guess actually psilocybin was, but the one that changed my life was MDMA. Yeah. And I feel grateful that found me in my
Yes.
20s. And it certainly isn't, it was not pure at that time. And I didn't have a source that was probably a good source. Didn't have to because fentanyl wasn't in the picture really. But I understand why you connected with it. Yeah. Even though you've connected with lots of hallucinogens and sacred nature, I understand why you made an exception for and I
Really?
yeah. So how have you seen women in particular use, because you and I are here because we've used these medicines and we've seen our life change for the better. So how are you facilitating women, shepherding them through to like, you give them full disclosure, I'm going to be working with Sand at the end of this month, and she will be working with me facilitating an experience. And we'll have intake interviews leading up to that medicine journey and then after. And so there's a lot of preparation and there's a lot of integration. You get to know these people. So how do you prepare people for what you know is about to happen? And leave it open so that they are in charge of their journey.
Mm.
The tension there is interesting to me.
Mm. It's a great question, April. It was a dance. I lean very heavily into 35 years of working with women, not in medicine, but working with women from my start as a social worker. So working with women in prisons, working with women with substance misuse and domestic violence and eating disorders, and all of the ways that walking on this earth in a body that is calcified and in a cage. And this is when I get moved to my core. And for most of it, it's but for the grace of God go I. The saying there is the women that I had the honor and the privilege, and still do have the honor and privilege of working with, some of our most marginalized community groups, because of where they were born. A zip code defines people, color of skin defines people, ability versus disability defines people. And so the belief of the story that all of us carry inside, how crippling those stories can be, that will define the dance that woman will take for some of them, for some of us, for the rest of our life. And so as a social worker, I was constantly a loud voice on behalf of the marginalized groups that didn't feel that they had a voice. And I was angry at the systems that didn't support the women that I was supporting in a way that I felt that they could be supported. The background of that, including my own background, my own story of my own physical abuse in my own family, verbal abuse, very angry father, mother that couldn't stand up to that dominant male in our family. And I love my father. He passed over a decade ago, but that's what took me into the plant medicine ceremonies in the first place, was to understand the psyche of the masculine male inside a male body, to understand where that power over comes from, so that I could meet it in the field. So I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life either as a victim of my own circumstances or carrying really toxic stories, which really led me to not trusting men for decades. So those stories are so deeply wired inside of us from whatever start we had in life. So I lean into that experience, and I've worked with thousands of women right across the spectrum, and CEOs and visionaries and leaders of their field. When I met medicine for the first time and realized I could work with women with medicine, I started to see the incredible potential of the moment when a woman meets herself, sees the stories that she's been living in as stories and not as truth anymore. And with the medicine, as we know, it starts to move the neuroplasticity of the medicine, meaning she starts to see the stories for what they are, that it's a story and not true. Her brain and her nervous system, then her physiology starts to work in a newer truth. If the story isn't that, then what would be the new story that we could start to claim fully? Not just a happy clapping mantra that is out there, a lot of the manifestation, like, oh, just say, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, I am beautiful over and over in a mirror, and one day you might believe it. But most of us, that will never. Why? Because literally our physical body is working against us. It's not the mental process, it's the physiology, because that story is so deeply wired. Our nervous system is finding evidence constantly of finding, I am ugly, or I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And when we really understand the benevolence and the power and the majesty of these medicines, the first time I sat with woman and she looked at herself in a mirror, like I was laid through the medicine, and saw the deepest truth, not just her beauty of her physical beauty, but her inner landscape of that beauty, the radiance of her. And she started to speak to herself and the little girls that are inside. I do a lot of work with internal family systems and different frameworks that from my social work background in this work. I was blown away by seeing a woman going for her soul retrieval so masterfully, so powerfully, so clearly, that as long as she kept doing that, she kept the new story alive inside of her after that day of medicine, then she's got a chance to truly change the depth of the narrative of her story that is running through the marrow of her bones, in her nervous system, in her existence of who she thought herself to be. The cage gets open. The woman sees the truth of who she is. She feels it. She can purge and release in all sorts of different beautiful ways of a story that is no longer true. And then she claims it's the sovereignty, it's her birthright to see and feel and know herself, of the sovereignty of who she really is. And that just, I was blown away. And of course, the first place I went was, why the hell did I not know about the power of these medicines all those years ago when I was a social worker that was literally banging my head against the proverbial brick wall? It's almost like it's so calcified. It's almost impossible that we're going to break the intergenerational trauma that keeps us in these calcified cages. So that is the power of the medicine. And from that moment, that was it. I'm giving my life to this work now, because there is no, for me, talk therapy, which I do talk therapy. I go in and out of therapy. I've got a great therapist. She's more of a coach with me these days. So I'm not dismissing any part of our healing modalities that are out there. I'm not. When talk therapy takes us to a certain point, the medicine takes us to the next point. For me, this is my belief from my own witnessing in my own life and the life of hundreds of women now with these medicines, seeing their life change beyond what they were able to access in some of the other modalities that are more legally available on this planet.
Not surprised. And you also have to be ready for it too, right? Thank you for joining us for today's show. I'm April, and I'll be back the next installment of Set Show, where we cover everything you need to have a safe, supported psychedelic experience in the wild. If you're starting to think about holiday gifts, Set has you covered. For the stoners and psychonauts on your list, Set's Psychedelic Cards, a card game to enhance connection and exploration during altered states. Go to getsetset.com, that's GETSETSET.com, and get 1 deck of cards for free when you purchase 2 decks. Enter the number 3, FOR, the number 2 at checkout. That's 3, FOR, 2 at getsetset.com.